agradeço neste momento ao professor Dr. Darren Baines, professor de Economia da Saúde de Bournemouth University e University of Bradford, que possa dar início à sua intervenção neste momento.
Hello, thank you for the invitation to speak. Over the next 10 minutes, I want to speak to you about the professional role of pharmacy in the future. I think there's COVID has really changed the game, and listening to the really enjoyable presentations today, I can see that, you know, there's a real challenge in terms of the technology that's coming up. But let me just outline a couple of things to you. I think firstly, COVID is a game changer. Whatever we talked about in terms of technology a year ago, the situation has completely changed. So what I want to do, given that we only have about 10 minutes now, is to give you my conclusions. Firstly, I believe that COVID will change the technology in primary care. It will change the way that doctors work. And as a result, what we're likely to see is that doctors are less likely to see patients. They're less likely to have face-to-face consultations. So the first point is this: if doctors move online, and if doctors use new technologies, and if doctors network in a different way, what happens to the standalone pharmacy that has been built next door to a GP surgery? And I think the biggest challenge for the pharmacy profession isn't necessarily things like blockchain. The biggest challenge is, what do we do with the pharmacy? Because it's been built in a place that is there to serve footfall. It's there to serve the patient that walks between the doctor and the pharmacy to collect their prescription. Those locations will disappear over the next 5 years because doctors will realize once you're online, you don't need a surgery. And if you do need a surgery, perhaps we need centralized surgeries. So the first thing I can tell you, and I think this is a short-term conclusion, is changes in technology in primary care are going to really challenge the way that pharmacy works. And that's the big challenge. And what do pharmacists do? As a result, we're likely to see a whole range of changes, but I'll come back to that. What I want to do is just go through a presentation, and I thank you, Congress, for inviting me here today to talk about this, is to go through a presentation where we talk about the professional's role in the future of technology. I think before we start, it would be a good idea just to agree what we mean by technology. Technology isn't the thing in your hand. Technology isn't your mobile phone. Technology isn't the internet. Technology is the interaction between the person and the machine. Technology is a process, not an object. And I think where pharmacy, with its recent learnings about technology, it has focused primarily on technology as an object. And what we need to do is focus on technology as something that pharmacists use. So we need to focus on technology-enabled pharmacy. I think the reason I'm specifying this message is that it's not important what the technology is. What is important is how it changes pharmacist behavior. And that's the thing we need to be talking about, not technology and innovation. We need to be talking about changes in pharmacist behavior. So if you want to contact me, I'm a professor of health economics, and I have studied pharmacy for 20 years. Please contact me. I'm more than happy to debate. But one thing I need to tell you is that I love pharmacy. I completely, for the last 20 years, I wish I'd trained as a pharmacist. Economics is just so boring compared with pharmacy. And one of the things I wanted to show you today is I'm in an actual Victorian pharmacy, a UK pharmacy, and all of the bottles and drawers are real. So this is an original pharmacy. And the reason that I'm here is because if you look, we are surrounded by technology. This is the key thing that pharmacists need to understand. Pharmacists are technologists. Throughout their history, pharmacists have been technologists. Pharmacists have created the drug industry. Pharmacists have created the dyeing industry. Pharmacists created industry after industry after industry based upon their technology. Early pharmacists led the development of science worldwide. You are technologists. And this is what I want to ask you. If you're technologists, you should be involved in technology. But if you're clinicians, you should be involved in patients. So over the next few minutes, I just want to challenge whether you think you're a technologist or a clinician. And I believe that the profession has never been a clinician in the same way as a doctor, but what it has done is revolutionize the world. And pharmacists are revolutionaries. They have changed the world through using technology. The key question now is, do pharmacists become technologists again? I just want to take you through some of the challenges that involves. First thing to recognize is that pharmacists have always been technologists. If you go back to apothecaries, you will see that an apothecary is somebody that combines different ingredients. And what you'll find is that technology means skill. It means cunning of hand. Technology is something you take in your hand and you manipulate and you do something with. Technology is a pharmacist taking an object and making a patient better, whether that's a herb, whether that's a pill maker, whether that's compounding. Pharmacists are technologists. They have only exist because they were technologists. They haven't existed because of clinical skills. They've existed because of their relationship with medicines. So what I'm going to say to you is, if you want to think about the future of pharmacy and what the implications are, you have to think about the role, the history of pharmacists as technologists. And as this slide shows you, pharmacists have been technologists for a long time. Look at that guy in the middle. He is making something. All you have to do is you have to swap the physical bottle, the pouring, for a 5G, for a scan, for any blockchain technology. Once you swap the medicine, the compounding, the mixing, you realize that pharmacy is there to make choices about technology. If a patient comes to you, you decide what technology to give them. You decide which medicine. Medicine is a technology. In the future, you'll decide which medicine, which compliance device, how they collect data on their phone. Pharmacy is about technology. However, there's one problem that we've got. At the moment, technology is something that's happening here, and pharmacists are here dispensing. Pharmacists are dispensing here, and technology is happening here. Technology is happening in Amazon. Technology is happening in companies outside of the industry. What pharmacists need to do is grab the technology industry and say, no technology without us, because you're going to miss the point. We are technology enabled pharmacists. We have always been technology enabled. We have always had a relationship between technology. That's why we're here. We're technologists. But if technology happens here and pharmacies here dispensing or doing pharmaceutical care, what we're going to find is that the pharmacist will disappear and the technology will take over. I'll say that again. The pharmacist will disappear and the technology will take over. And there will not be technology-enabled pharmacy. There will just be technology. That's the challenge. And I think that's the challenge that the pharmacy profession needs to think about very quickly, because COVID has made all of this real. COVID is a game changer. As I said, the patient will not see the GP. There will not be physical footfall. There will not be people going into pharmacies. If there is people going into pharmacies, there will be consolidation and pharmacies will merge. There will be dispensing centers. So why am I saying all this? The reason I'm saying this is we need to go back to the introduction of pharmaceutical care. In the mid-1980s, pharmacy as dispensers was a profession without direction. And I love pharmacy. I'm saying this as a historical fact. But in 1990, pharmaceutical care became the vision for saving pharmacy. And if you read this excerpt from the paper, it says pharmacists have been clinical. Pharmacists, the raison d'etre for pharmacy is clinical care. Pharmacists are clinicians. Well, I've read the history books of pharmacy. I don't see pharmacists as clinicians. I think that that's been a small part of their role. Pharmacists have created the pharmaceutical industry. Pharmacists created photography. Pharmacists created industry after industry after industry after industry. Chemical industry, advances in science. They weren't clinicians. The history of pharmacy is not the history of a clinical profession. They've got clinical skills, but that hasn't been the driver of pharmacy. The driver of pharmacy has been a relationship with new technologies, innovation in doing things, not innovation in objects, innovation in achieving things, innovation to make people's lives better based upon science and the application of science in terms of technology. Hepler and Strand were wrong. The raison d'etre of pharmacy has not been clinical. It has been technological. Now, I may not be popular for saying this, but if I'm wrong, let me just show you one fact. This is a diagram of all the technologies that have been introduced since the 1980s. The 1980s was the digital age, the age of the personal computer. But just look at this. In March 1990, the American Journal of Hospital Pharmacy published the famous paper on pharmaceutical care. From that day, 1990 has been 30 years. What advance has the profession achieved in pharmaceutical care in 30 years? How much has been achieved in over a quarter of a century in pushing the profession forward? 1990, the personal computer existed. But look what's happened since. Since 1990, the internet has been invented. There was no Facebook. There was no LinkedIn. There were no mobile phones. There was no 5G. There was no blockchain. Everything we understand today has developed since the pharmacy profession has used pharmaceutical care as its main philosophy of practice. None of these developments are there to help pharmacists become clinicians. So what's happened is that pharmacists have ignored the recent changes in technology because it hasn't helped them improve their clinical prowess. The journey of pharmacy for 30 years has been a clinical journey. Show me what it has achieved. Show me how it's changed. Because for me, the major developments in pharmacy in the last 30 years haven't been clinical. They've been the invention of new medicines that are much more effective than their predecessors. It's been that new technology in medicines that's changed pharmacy, that's led to more dispensing, that's led to more clinical skills. It hasn't been driven by clinical ideology. It's been driven by technology in the pharmaceutical industry. But look at all these opportunities that are being missed. Look at all of the things that have happened since pharmaceutical care. Pharmacy needs a new model of practice, and pharmaceutical care needs to be rewritten to take account of not only the technologies that have happened in the last 30 years, but the unbelievable changes in technology that are going to happen in the next 5 years, particularly due to COVID. So let me ask you a question. The technological future of pharmacy depends upon one thing, not the technology. It doesn't matter what the technology is. It matters whether you pick the technology up and put it in your hands and use it, because technology continues at a pace. But are you picking up that technology and saying, that is a pharmacy technology, that belongs to us? That technology can only be used if you have a pharmacist involved. Or do you say, let other people develop technology, and eventually it will help us with our clinical skills. I'd like to suggest, for one reason, and I'm just going to come to a conclusion very quickly because of time, I'm going to suggest one thing that's happened that I think is shocking. I am sitting here in a Victorian pharmacy that is full of technology that was relevant at the time, 100 years ago. But there's one thing that I think has happened that has been shocking. The pharmacy has been ignored. Why has the pharmacy profession ignored the pharmacy and focused on the pharmacist? Because pharmacies only exist because of the apothecary, because of the chemist shop. The pharmacy hasn't evolved beyond the pharmacy. But why is the pharmacy not being seen as a matter of urgency of a technology-enabled pharmacy? And just here is a paper that I wrote for FIP probably 5 years ago explaining the design of a future of pharmacy, a technology-enabled pharmacy. But it's not happening. Why? I'm just so perplexed. So let's draw some conclusions. I think the first conclusion that I want to draw, and this is my humble opinion, pharmacists are technologists. They're clinicians. They can be clinicians. They can specialize. But if you look at the history of pharmacy, pharmacists are technologists. They've always been technologists. So let me give you an example. This is an example of a paper that I wrote with some colleagues from FIP about technology-enabled pharmaceutical care. It's a new way of doing things. And the new model of pharmacy practice isn't pharmaceutical care. It is blended pharmacy practice, face-to-face consultations, technology-enabled pharmacy, and patient health technologies. The combination of patient technologies, pharmacy technologies, and face-to-face consultations. To me, that's the way forward. So let's draw some conclusions and before we go. So I think the conclusions are simple. Pharmacists have been technologists since the beginning of time. I believe the time has now come for a change in pharmacy behavior and a change in pharmacy practice in order for the pharmacy profession to focus on technology rather than clinical care. However, we must evaluate properly. My name's Professor Darren Baines. I'm a great advocate for pharmacy. I believe in pharmacy, but what I see is a technological revolution that's happening outside of pharmacy because of a focus on clinical and not a focus on technological. Thank you for your invitation.
Thank you very much, Darren. Very quick question, 30 seconds if you can. What would technology-enabled pharmacy look like in your vision in the future?
Okay, so it's very simple. I walk into a pharmacy. There's a pharmacist there that I have a phone that's connected to the pharmacy. We don't worry about the health service and their data. The phone's connected to the pharmacy. On there's got compliance, questions. The pharmacist already knows who I am. A bit like a phone shop, I go to somebody who's there, like a technician, and say, can you help me with my technology? The technician helps me update my apps, work with my technology. While I'm waiting for a prescription, I can sit in the corner and I can have monitoring done, diabetes monitoring, a technology section. I can also do online questionnaires in the pharmacy, and I can interact with professionals remotely, and I can be involved in clinical trials. So the pharmacy becomes the technology hub for the health service.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Pharmacy suite. Thank you very much, Darren.